Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 897 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, I'll be speaking with Sian. She is the mother of a child with type 1 diabetes. She's from Scotland, and she's delightful. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 or is the caregiver of someone with type 1, please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. Completing their survey helps to move type 1 diabetes research forward. Your simple answers to simple questions are going to do it. That's all you need to do. Just answer the survey. It takes like 10 minutes. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Help type 1s, help yourself, help me. Complete the survey. In fact, if you need anything that the sponsors offer, using my links is a big help. It really is. Juiceboxpodcast.com, all the links are there, and they're in the show notes of the audio app you're listening in right now. Just click on the links or type them in a browser to support the podcast. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Today's episode is also sponsored by Dexcom. And of course, they make the Dexcom G6 and brand new Dexcom G7 continuous glucose monitoring systems. We just got an email from US Med yesterday that Arden's G7s are on the way. She'll be making the switch at her very next CGM change. You could too. Dexcom.com/juicebox.
My name is Sian. It's a bit of a funny name, I know. So it's Sian, and I live in the Highlands of Scotland in a very small village. And I have 4 children. So life is very busy. My eldest is 13. I then a girl. I then have identical twins, Maisie and Darcy. Scarlett's the eldest. Maisie and Darcy, they are 11, and Alfie is 4.
Who has diabetes?
Maisie has diabetes, one of the identical twins.
11 years old.
Yes.
Identical infers that her sibling is a girl, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Darcy, yes.
Right. All right. I got it. Here's my first question. If you're from Scotland, why can I understand you?
Okay, so I live in Scotland and my husband's Scottish, but I'm from England.
See, I thought you sounded English, and I was like, wait, what's going on? Why is she so clear?
I don't sound Scottish at all. And I've lived in Scotland for over 20 years. And if someone asked me to even attempt to do a Scottish accent, I wouldn't have a clue. My accent hasn't changed in the slightest from living up here. I'm not good at accents.
When you first met your husband, and you were around a mixed group of people, and say some of them were like American English speaking, and your husband started speaking, did you think no one understands him?
No, I always understood him. He doesn't have a particularly strong Scottish accent, but I can remember bringing him home to my mum, and my sister was there, and they would just be saying, "What's he saying? What's he saying?" I say, "Well, don't ask me, just speak to him, ask him to repeat it." They couldn't seem to understand him, but I always could. He's quite a gentle accent.
But you've heard me talk about my brother-in-law, right?
No, I'm not sure I have.
My brother-in-law is from Scotland.
Oh, okay.
And I don't understand a word he's saying most of the time.
No. There's some areas of Scotland that I really, really struggle. Yeah.
And at the end of his statements, he often goes, "Aye," which I don't know what that means. And he's, and there's like a lot of like grunting, but it's like pleasant Scottish grunting. It's not, it's not like German or Russian growling. You know what I mean? It's just sort of like, it's like, he goes, "Hey," and it's like bing, 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 like this. And I hear a word and I'm like, oh, he's talking about the economy, and then I just start keyword listening for words about money and inflation and things like that.
Whereabouts in Scotland is he from?
I wish I knew. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
He lives in
Maybe
Pennsylvania.
Glasgow or somewhere.
He lives in Pennsylvania now, but has not for a split second gotten rid of any of that accent.
No.
And I just watch him talking, and his face is lit up like he's making points and gestures, and you're smiling and like nodding along, and he's like, oh, he thinks we understand this. And you know,
bless him.
It's possible he's living a completely like muted life, like, and he doesn't know it. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like he's speaking and a voice isn't coming out, but he hears it in his ears and he believes everyone else is hearing it. And so
what a shame.
Just like, yeah, you put your hand on his shoulder, you're like, ah, and then at the end he's like, aye, and I'm like, yeah, and then it's over. I could have just agreed to like wash his car, give him $1,000. Like, I don't even know. I'm just like, yeah. Anyway. Well, I'm glad you can understand your husband. That's nice.
Yes, I can. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Where did you meet this boy at? Why did you get drugged to Scotland?
Well, we met in Oxford. So we were both at university not at Oxford, but Oxford Brookes, which is another university in Oxford. And we met through a mutual friend there. And then slowly he has moved me further and further up
into the woods.
Country. Like seriously, we were in Edinburgh, which is quite central, and then he got me to the Highlands. He's actually from Thurso, which is as far up as you can possibly go, and that's only an hour and a half from us. But I'm not going any further up than I am, because everywhere, even now, it's an hour to the closest city, to the closest airport, cinema. Any of the big shops is an hour.
Yeah.
From Thurso, it's 2.5 hours. So no, I'm not going any further.
I think you're in trouble when they're considering filming Game of Thrones where you live.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Well, Sian, I have to tell you that you just made me laugh because you're like, we met at Oxford. Then there was like a pause, and you went, well, not Oxford. Like it was almost like you said, oh, we met at Harvard. Not the one you're thinking of, though.
I always feel I should clarify, because otherwise it sets up expectations that.
Well, yeah, there was like a split second. I was like, I'm talking to a brilliant person who's lost in the woods, and then you're like, no, not that Oxford. Don't worry, nothing like that.
A different one.
Yeah, a different one, not one you've heard of. So, it's like an annex.
That's right.
Anyway, so you guys are, you have the background, right? Like, we have Scottish background, we have an English background. There's no surprise here at all that you have an autoimmune disease in your family. So,
no.
How many run in your family lines?
We have no other type 1 that we know of at all in the family. So it was a big surprise when Maisie got diagnosed, but it's not uncommon in the Highlands. So there is a lot of type 1, and that just seems to be increasing and increasing and increasing, scarily fast at the moment. But in our village, which probably has about 400 people, there is 4 type 1 children. So on a bus of 20, 4 of them have got type 1.
Wow.
Which is nuts. Yeah,
they'll be able to take over in another 5 years. Maybe.
Yeah. The strange thing about it is that they don't actually talk about it. My eldest, Scarlett, says that the siblings talk about it, but the actual type 1s, one of them might say to the other, oh, what are your bloods today or right now? And they'll say, oh, I don't know, 5.5 or whatever. I put a table up so I could quickly.
Actually, you just reminded me. I don't know why your accent didn't get me to open up the conversion chart that I have. But
so might say it's 100, and that's really it. Whereas I thought that they would communicate more about it, but I quite like the fact that they don't talk about type 1 all the time, because it means it's not at the forefront of their mind. They're just normal kids who have type 1, but they don't need to talk about it all the time. It's lovely for the parents. I've got several friends in the village now who we can support each other, but the children don't tend to chat about it that much.
I guess if anyone ever has a seizure, that they'll probably get stabbed multiple times with different glucagon needles.
That is exactly. Right. My husband and I had to fly down to London for a funeral a few months ago, and I left all the children here, and a friend was looking after them, and I said to him, do not panic. Well, do panic if Maisie, she's never has before, but if suddenly she has a horrendous hypo and she needs to have that orange injection, because we still have that one, I'm not going to show you how to use it. Call 999, but just run to any of these 3 people. Someone will be in and they will come and do it for you. There's always someone around that can offer some support. So it's quite comforting to have them near.
When you say your village, in my mind, they're like, I don't know, round structures with straw roofs and a little dirt road, and like a little, I don't know, there's like a water collection in the middle of town, and you're all within like 40 yards of each other.
Well, the roads are quite narrow, and it's almost like a grid of roads. Stone cottages, really, I think.
But there's no old woman like tanning leather outside right now or something like that, right?
No, not currently.
Okay.
No. We're just this tiny little village right next to the sea.
Ah, that's nice. It sounds very nice, actually.
Yeah,
Except for
it is nice.
Is it cold there?
It is. Yeah, it's frustratingly cold. My mum is in Essex and she'll be roasting. And we really do love the sun. We were just in France and it was so lovely to have some heat. And up here, we'll be freezing. I'll have the fire on and they will be literally melting. It's quite annoying.
Okay. So what about other autoimmune stuff in your family? Celiac or, I don't know.
No, the only thing that my granddad and my mum do have a little bit of is psoriasis. Is that autoimmune? Is that something you've mentioned before, psoriasis?
I believe it
the
is.
Skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about IBS?
No.
Okay. Well, she really is lucky, isn't she?
Yeah, bless her.
Is psoriasis an autoimmune disease? What does the CC? The CDC says it is, so it is.
Yeah. That's really it. Certainly that we're aware of. So it did come totally out of the blue when Maisie was diagnosed.
Wow, it's crazy.
Yeah.
How old was she when she was diagnosed?
She was 9. So it was right at the beginning. Well, it was just 2 years ago. On Monday, she had her second anniversary. So it was in the middle of lockdown, and her behaviour it just hadn't been right. She couldn't concentrate. She couldn't focus. She was agitated. And, now I've just have such horrendous mum's guilt because we'd go for a walk or we'd go for a bike ride and she was so slow. And they're all very sporty. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't work out why she was suddenly lagging behind. So, I was saying, come on, Maisie, stop being so lazy. What's wrong with you? I'm going to take you to the doctors. There's something going on here. And she said, I don't know. But she just wasn't right. And then just before they went back to school, I was getting them ready to, I was saying, right, in the shower, etc. And I walked in, the twins at that point showered at the same time. And I walked in and looked at them and I was like, oh my goodness, what's happened to Maisie? She was skin and bones. It was awful compared to Darcy, who just looked like this strapping, beautiful, healthy child. And then her identical sister, who was suddenly just shriveled. And I was just like, Maisie, get on the scales. So she weighed herself, and then I got Darcy to weigh herself. And Maisie had lost a stone, which is just over 6 kilos. Is that what you're using?
I love it that you translated it to another measurement that I don't know.
Do you know? Okay, 14 pounds.
There you go.
Yeah. So she had lost a fair bit of weight, and I got Darcy on the scales, and then I texted a friend who's got identical twins, and I said, has one of them ever put on masses of weight or lost weight? Or has there ever been a big gap between them? And she was like, no, really only a couple of pounds. I was like, oh, this is odd. But I persuaded myself that it was a growth spurt that Darcy must have had, and Maisie hadn't. I didn't realise, I hadn't weighed them, so I didn't realise that she'd really lost the weight. I was just like, this is very odd, but I kept explaining it away. And then they went to school for the week, and then at the weekend, it was a Saturday, and the 3 girls went off on a club, And my eldest came home, and I can always remember she just walked into the kitchen, banged her hand on the table, and said, "Right, I think that Maisie's got type 1 diabetes." And I said, "Where on earth have you got that from?" And she said, "Well, she's constantly going to the toilet. She had to go to the toilet at this club about 3 times. She drank my water, Darcy's water, her own water. She's lost all that weight. You need to phone, I think, NHS 24, which is like the out of hour number that you can ring." I was like, "Don't be so silly." Anyway, I phoned my sister. My sister said, "Well, I have been thinking about type 1 as well, because a friend of hers had been diagnosed." She said, "Phone NHS 24, do it now." I was like, "No, I'll just take her to the doctors on Monday." She said, No, do it now." I phoned them up. Thankfully, they took it really seriously and said, "Yeah, you need to take her to the hospital, just to the local hospital." I can remember going out to my husband. He was in the garden saying, "Babe, they want me to take Maisie to hospital." And he was like, "Oh, for goodness sake, this is daft. Surely not." I said, "Well, I have to. They've said take her, so I have to." She was round at her friends on the trampoline, so she was perfect. She was fine. She was fit and well and bouncing away. So I just said to her, "Maisie, you've lost all that weight. The doctors just want to see you." She literally jumped into the car, and we drove up to the local hospital. Got out of the car. She didn't have her shoes on, so it was really embarrassing walking through this hospital.
I'm a good mom, I swear to God.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so I was like, "I am so sorry." She hasn't got any shoes. She's just been on the trampoline.
You're bringing a skeleton in. They're like,
yeah. Shoeless skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Well, she looks fine. Let's just have a look." So he took a, wee sample, and he was like, "Oh, I wasn't quite expecting to see that. Oh," and he said, "There's glucose in this. We're going to have to do a finger prick." So he did a finger prick, and he just straight away, he just said, "I am so sorry, but your daughter's got type 1 diabetes." And I said, "No, she doesn't." And he said, "She does." I was like, No, she doesn't." And he said, yeah, she really does. Her bloods are 25, which is 450, right. I think. She really does, and you need to go home, pack a bag, and take her down to the hospital in Inverness. And I said, "No, do you know, my husband, for some reason, brought home a bottle of Fanta today, and she's been guzzling because she's so thirsty. The Fanta, it has to be that." And he said, "Well, was it sugar-free Fanta, or did it have sugar?" "I'm not sure. I phoned my husband." So I phoned my husband. He's like, "Oh, it was sugar-free." I was like, "Oh, damn. I didn't want it to be sugar-free."
Let me try this.
Yeah.
I don't want her to have diabetes. Does that have any impact on this at all?
Yeah. And I mean, obviously now I know that a glass of Fanta isn't going to send non-diabetic's blood up to 450. Mm-hmm. But at that point, I didn't know that. So he was like, "Okay, well, it's definitely diabetes. It's nothing to do with the Fanta. So you do need to go to the hospital. You do understand this, Mrs. Evans, don't you?" I was like, yes, I understand. Okay. Drove home and said to my husband, they say Maisie's got type 1 diabetes. And that's really one of the only times she cried. We were in the car going home from the local hospital, and she said, "What is it?" I said, "Honestly, I don't really know. All I do know, though, is that I don't think it can be cured." And she was like, "Oh," and she just started crying. I think we probably both did. And when I got back home, my husband said, "I can't deal with this. I'll take her to the hospital." So he went down to the hospital with her, and I stayed at home with the other children. And he phoned up within half an hour and said, "Yeah, she's definitely got type 1 diabetes. And as they're identical twins, Darcy's got about a 70% chance of developing it at some point as well." And I was just like,
"What's the percentage? What's the percentage they gave you on
Darcy?" Well, I've been quoted different ones. I think the lowest I've been quoted is 40%. The most I've been quoted is 80%. So I don't know, just a high percentage that Darcy could. And there's lots of identical twins type 1, certainly on the Facebook group in the UK sort of Facebook group. And whenever I see another identical twin being diagnosed, I always send them a little message and say, how long between the first diagnosis and the second? And the average is normally about 2.5 years.
Really?
But I mean, there's some totally 10 years or never happened, not never happened if I've seen it on the group, but so we're thinking could be any time. Any colds,
right?
Anything.
Or never. No. Your English is coming out a little too much here. The part of the story where you get in the car and she's like, "What is this?" And you're like, "I don't know, but they can't cure it." It was very blunt, Sian.
Well, that was all I knew about type 1.
You're not exactly not exactly a party clown, huh?
No, bless her. I hadn't really ever thought of that.
Whatever it is, sweetie, it's stuck to you forever. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Oh, poor Maisie. Yeah. No wonder she was crying.
Yeah, my mom is cruel.
So I then I phoned my mum and said, "Mum, the hospital are keeping Maisie in for about 5 days, and they want us both there, Ian and me, because they have to train us both on everything. You're going to have to fly up." So she got the sort of morning flight, and as soon as she arrived, I headed down to the hospital, and our type 1 journey began.
Yeah.
And that, there was just such an incredible amount to learn at first, and to get your head around. And I struggled. I cried and cried and cried a lot. I thought that our life was going to change so much. I can remember lying in the hospital bed just thinking, how are we going to go away for the weekend? How are we going to do anything? I'm just going to be worried all the time. But, you learn, don't you? And things get certainly easier and more routine. But at that point, I just felt completely lost. And I still feel bad feeling like that the other 3 children might have felt like they lost their mum for a while, because I was so focused on Maisie. And, sometimes I shout up to Darcy and I say, "Darcy, can you come here a minute?" And she'll say, "Do you mean Maisie?" No, I actually mean you this time. Oh, she was so used to me always.
I have to tell you, Sian, that's pretty sad.
Yeah,
I know. God, I don't even mean to laugh.
My heart.
She's like, "You must not mean me. You never talk to me, right?"
No, and Darcy is, she's just so lovely, and she just gets on with it, and she never really causes me any bother. And I think they really did lose me for a while, because I just threw myself completely into trying to make this life with type 1 as easy as I could for Maisie. But the rest of them, I do feel sad about that. But,
well, listen, for Maisie, she just doesn't want Mrs. Bad News to come back.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't. But, I feel lucky now in that I find type 1 fascinating, and I could literally talk type 1 all day, because there's so much to it and there's so much to learn, and it's interesting.
Well, how did you get to
lucky.
That? I'm sorry, how did you get to that from feeling like this is it, we're done, it's over, we might as well just go lay down outside and let the birds pick our eyes out, to I like talking about this, it's not that impactful, and like, how do you make that transition? When you have diabetes and use insulin, low blood sugar can happen when you don't expect it. Gvoke HypoPen is a ready-to-use glucagon option that can treat very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes ages 2 and above. Find out more. Go to gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with pheochromocytoma or insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. Blood glucose levels rise and fall. Foods impact differently. Hormones change all of that. So does stress, anxiety, exercise, sleep, lack of, too much, blah, blah, blah. There are so many variables that make your blood sugar fluctuate. Being able to see what's happening in real time is vital. No more guessing. I think that meal makes me spike. I think a business meeting makes my blood sugar rise. Am I getting low at 3 a.m.? Stop wondering. Get a Dexcom. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Start today with the G6 or brand new G7 so that you can see how the impacts in your life are impacting blood sugars. Not only that, you can share if you want. Like if your kid was at school, you could look on your phone and see what their blood sugar is and get alarms at wherever you set them. You want to know when the kid's blood sugar gets to 80, set an alarm for it. Are you an adult? You don't want the thing to ring until 150? Right on. Do you. It's completely customizable. So now you can see your blood sugar, how fast it's moving, what direction it's going in, and the number right on your receiver or smartphone, Android or iPhone. It couldn't be simpler or more needed. Dexcom.com/juicebox. No more overcorrecting because you can see, oh, I had a half a juice and look what it did to my blood sugar. Next time I'll know not to drink the whole juice, or I don't need 4 Smarties. I don't need the whole roll of Smarties. You get what I'm saying. Seeing the impacts in real time has real-time impacts. Not only that, you can share data with up to 10 followers if you want to. You can set alarms wherever you want them. My daughter's alarms go off at 70 and 120 on my phone. You could change any of those numbers you wanted to. It's completely customizable. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Look, get a Dexcom. It's the best thing you can do if you're using insulin. It's my opinion. Yes, this is an ad, but that's my opinion. Find me on the street and ask me, I'll say the same thing. With that said, please do not find me on the street. All right, links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting the production of this podcast and keeping it free. So I appreciate it when you do that.
I read a lot. In the first few weeks, I bought as many books as I could on type 1. I joined the sort of Facebook groups. This can lead me on to how I found the podcast, actually, because I can remember Googling inspirational people who have got type 1, or celebrities. I think I Googled who have type 1. And through that, I came across Adam Lasher, Santana's nephew.
Yeah.
And I really like Santana. So I was like, oh, that caught my eye. Santana. Oh, interesting. Adam Lasher. Okay. So I Googled Adam Lasher type 1, and that got me to the Juicebox podcast because he was the first person you interviewed. So that's right, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I came into, the Juicebox world. And that was really early days. So the podcast and following on the Facebook group have been part of my, support network pretty much from day one.
That's crazy. Do you know whenever this was, January 2015, and I'm getting ready to start the podcast with this completely backwards idea of what the podcast is going to be. Right. And I was sitting down and recording these episodes by myself where I was just basically talking through my most popular blog posts from the blog.
Right.
And I did it for a little while. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. It doesn't sound right. I wouldn't listen to this. I deleted everything that I made. And while I was trying to figure out how to proceed, this guy pops up on American Idol, not in the heyday of American Idol, but it still wasn't like an afterthought, sort of like it was today. It is now. You know what I mean? Like it's just lost in a sea of singing competitions. And this guy's got type 1 diabetes. And I just reached out to him and I was like, hey, do you want to be on a podcast about type 1? And he goes, yeah. And that was it. I had never recorded an episode ever when I recorded with him, with another person. So my first episode was with a guy who was on American Idol. And I think that helped launch the podcast a little bit.
It's how I found the podcast.
Yeah. And then all these years later, you found it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Through that. So I just did a lot of reading. I picked up lots of tips from different places, and I just found it fascinating. And we were sort of, we've been on it, day one. We got a Dexcom very early on, not through the hospital, but I'd listened to you and I'd read about it, and I was like, I have to have this. So within 4 weeks, we funded it ourselves, but she was on Dexcom, and that made things so much easier. And now when we look back on, I found one of her blood glucose diaries a while ago, and it said that she had a hypo. This was before Dexcom. She'd had a hypo, and then she'd gone on to have 4 fruit pastels. Do you have fruit pastels?
No.
A sweet.
Okay.
So she'd gone on to have 4 sweets, and then the next reading she'd be like, I've lost it. 300. Oh, why has she gone to 300? But then with Dexcom, you realise she really doesn't need 4 sweets for a hypo. 1 sweet is really sufficient. So yeah, God, the way you treat things before you have Dexcom and the way you do it afterwards is so different. You just can't do it. You're blind. You cannot do it without some sort of CGM or Libre or so we got Dexcom, and then she was MDI for 15 months. Now she's on T-Slim with Dexcom and Control IQ.
Oh, that's excellent. I just want to make sure that the people from Dexcom heard that I just sold a Dexcom in Scotland. That's really what
you did.
Yeah.
You did.
Like, pay attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't send you all the data, but like listen to what you hear people saying. Sian, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I when I see your name, it sticks out, right? It's spelled differently. And I think of you as a person who really enjoys the podcast and is is a supporter of it. And I only know, it's odd that I only really know people through, little avatars and their names and things like that. But I want you to, if you can, explain to me why. It's going to sound like I'm trying to get you to say something nice about me, but really, I really want to understand why you so kind of excitedly enjoy it, because I don't understand.
But, I wrote down 3 things that go through my mind all the time about type 1, and they're 3 things that you have said or done. So one of the first things I did once I joined the Facebook group, I think it was watched a conference that you'd done at some point. I'm not sure which one, but you were telling a story and you were talking about it must have been Arden having some pie, and that she needed a correction afterwards. So you then said something along the lines of, if you have a pie and mash or whatever, and you need a correction, then just give up the amount of insulin you're giving up front the next time you have that piece of pie. And it was such a light bulb moment. I can remember walking to the school just because I had to race for pickup just after it, and I was just like, oh my God, that makes such sense. Why am I doing the same thing, giving the same amount of insulin for this meal, and each time knowing it's going to go wrong and having to give a correction? That's madness. Yeah. Why am I not just upping the amount of insulin? So honestly, that just went boom, of course. And then, you often say they just need more insulin. And I do a lot of thinking in the shower, and I'll be showering thinking, why is Maisie's blood so high? I don't understand it. What am I missing? She just needs more insulin. And I was, up her ratios, or at that point up her Levemir. Now obviously just change the pump a bit. And then the other one that you say is trust what you know will happen. And oh my goodness, you have to. It's so true. I know that if she's going to have an ice cream, she is going to go high later, so I can give her the extended because of that. And as long as it's going to happen, so treat it. I can't bear it when she goes over 10, 180. We don't go really near that often, because I trust what will happen. I trust what will happen will happen.
Yeah.
And it's given me so much more control. We've always been quite mindful about doing things. She does eat what she wants, but we make a couple of swaps that she's happy with. We are mindful about we're mindful about if she's going to have a treat or something like that, she'll have it at the end of the meal, like Jenny has said before. She doesn't really have anything carby before going to bed because it's just going to mess with her levels, and we don't want that. I want to sleep. She wants to sleep. But I have learned so much through the podcast. And I think I've said on a post before, and this is a bit morbid, but I used to panic thinking, if something was to happen to me, how on earth am I, I can't impart all this knowledge to Ian. And what if something just suddenly happened to me? I need someone else I need Ian to know everything, but I can't just download everything into his brain. I don't need to panic about that anymore because it's all there. The pro tip series, all the information that I would need to give to Ian, you've got out there. So it's a huge worry I don't have anymore.
Well, I'm the only one that still has that worry because no one in my family is going to listen to a podcast where it's just me talking.
They will.
They will stare at that podcast like, I know what's in there and I know I got to go get it, but I don't feel like hearing him talk about it. Well, I want to tell you that it's very, I don't even know what the word is. Like, I feel I'm happy that it worked for you that way. But moreover, it's almost fascinating for me to hear like my light bulb, because these things you mentioned, they're just my light bulb moments from raising Arden, right? Where it used to be me talking to myself and I'd be like, I have to trust that this is going to happen. It happens every time. Why do I act like the next time it's not going to happen? Why do I keep bolusing for this meal and then correcting 2 hours later? Why don't I just put the insulin up front in the bolus? And these are not, they were big leaps for me at the time, because I was stuck in this, like, I don't know, I counted the carbs and it said 5 units. So she got high later. I guess maybe I kept expecting for it not to go that way. And it just never did. There was just one day I was just like, why are you doing this? Stop doing that.
Well, for us, coming across all the information from you so early on, has just been, it's made this journey, so much easier. It really has. Her A1C is currently 5.6. She's got the clinic in a couple of weeks. I'm hopeful that it should be. Dexcom, predicts that it'll be about the same. And really that is, I'm sure Control IQ helps at night, certainly. But all of this, the ease that we manage things, so much of it is down to you and the information you get out there. So thank you.
Well, that's my pleasure.
Thank you.
I really do. Listen, I like hearing it a little more today than usual because lately there's been this person who's like trolling me online. No. And I'm getting these like short notes from them that are like, well, that episode was hard to listen to.
What?
You know what would make this podcast better? If you didn't speak so much. And I just listen.
That's ridiculous.
No, Sian, listen. If listen, I know how many people listen to the podcast. If one person is drawn to tell me that, I'm okay. I don't imagine that only one person thinks what this person thinks. I'm sure more than one person thinks it. Actually, I got one of my best reviews ever recently that basically said that, listen, I don't like that guy, but this is a great podcast and I get great information from it. And I'm thinking that's like the nicest thing anybody could say to me. Like, you really don't like me and you're still listening? Like,
you're willing to listen.
Yeah, it's fantastic, because everyone's not going to like your personality, so that I thought was great. But yeah, so I think the person's giving up now. I haven't responded to them. I think they were looking for, they were looking for a fight, and I to that person, if you're listening, I'm an adult. I'm not going to fight with you. But it's still, it'll still like hit you every once in a while. Like, well, there's a person out there who heard that episode and was like, this is garbage. This is terrible. And then, no lie, last night, I got a note from a woman who said, I want to be on the show. And I was motivated by that really excellent episode you just put out. I loved it. She goes on and on about what she loved about it. And then she tells me what episode it is. And it's the one that the other person told me was terrible and they couldn't make it through it. And I was like, oh, okay.
There you go.
I had to be reminded that everything I say can't be universally beloved. You know what I mean? That there are just going to be people who are like, I don't like the guy, you know? So anyway, it was nice to hear that you do, because maybe
we do.
Yeah, I'll stop thinking about that guy now.
Yes, do. And get him out of your mind. You don't need that negativity.
The other reason I appreciate you sharing that with me is because I actually just finished up my my slide deck for Touched by Type 1, which I'm speaking at in Orlando in like 4 days. And I went over it last night. I was like, this is good. I like the way these are ordered. I can see how it'll pull me through the conversation. I don't prepare anything before I speak. So I look at the slide and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about this idea now. And then tell a story or an anecdote or give an example or something like that, move through it. And you hit on main ideas just now that I last night was like, well, I have to keep this in. This has to stay here. This has to stay here.
Great.
And you said all those things. So
that's excellent. Because and the only other one that is the fat and protein. What you say about fat and protein, and then I have an app on my phone, which I think someone was it yourself?
No, someone made
fat
it.
And protein
right?
count. Yeah. And that's so useful. So useful. And, you know, you put all of that together and you're left with something that is more manageable than at first you ever believed it could be. You know, saying about lying in the hospital bed and crying and thinking, you know, we were meant to be going on holiday that year to France and it was cancelled because of COVID. But we just went. We got back a few weeks ago and we were in France for about 3 weeks. And I never believed that would happen. I really didn't. I was terrified of how the heat was going to affect Maisie and, you know, having the pump and the swimming pool and all these different things. And I actually ended up being ill myself for 10 days. I'm not sure what was wrong with me, but I was completely knocked out to the point that I barely looked at Maisie's bloods, which I glance at my watch countless times a day, you know, seeing where her bloods are at.
Yeah.
But I didn't even have the energy to look at that. And it was great, actually, because it meant that Maisie really took control herself and she did absolutely awesome. And now I used to always send a sweet emoji. Oh, that's the other thing, texting diabetes. I mean, Maisie and me have done it pretty much from the start. I got her a watch and we just text and I sent her a sweet emoji if I think she's going low and she just, you know, does a quick okay to say that she's had a sweet. But now if I send a sweet emoji, instead of okay, I get already had one. And that was really because I was ill and backed off a bit on holiday. And it gave her some time to really have to get to grips with it herself, which she did, you know, amazingly, bless her. I can't remember. See, this is what happens.
But it's nice.
I start drifting off.
No, you're fine. It's interesting that you getting ill, it was a step forward for her care and for you.
Yes, it was. And really type 1 wasn't the most wasn't the thing on everyone's mind in that holiday. It was, you know, way down the line. Everyone was more worried about me and what was going on with me. And the practical stuff of type 1 had to keep happening. You know, we had to change the pump, we changed the Dexcom, etc., etc. But everything else was just our normal life.
Yeah. Well, and you know what that tells me?
I never thought that would happen.
Yeah, Sian, what that tells me is that everybody should be paying attention for moments where their kids or, you know, their spouse or whoever they're helping with their diabetes and say to them, look, today I'm not going to help you. Or, you know, like, let's see what you do. I'm going to get on a plane on Friday and I'm going to probably send Arden a text that says, I'm not going to be any help to you for the next 6 hours. So, and then it just forces, in the right way, forces a person to say, all right, well, this is on me. I'll pay closer attention, because there's probably in Arden's head always a part of her that thinks he's got my back.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it can keep you from being vigilant in the right places, in the right moments. And at the same time, you make this great point that it didn't overwhelm her. It didn't ruin the day or anything like that. That the way you put it, I forget exactly the words you used, because you use all kinds of Europe words and not my words. But there's something about the idea of diabetes becoming very functional and in the background and not in the front of your brain. You're not always sitting thinking like, well, what's going to happen next? She's going to get low 2 hours from now. I know it. That stays out of your head. How much does Dexcom have to do with your comfort with that?
Oh,
has to be
100%. It's I couldn't. I honestly don't know that I'll be functioning without Dexcom.
Mm-hmm.
I worry a lot about everything. I am anxious. I like to be in control. And without Dexcom, I would feel completely and utterly blind. Yeah, I wouldn't cope.
I used Arden's Dexcom this morning so this is weird, but Arden is a lady, which Maisie will be someday, and she has different blood sugars throughout the month, I guess, and she has different needs for insulin a couple of different times a month. And when they change pretty quickly. Right. And I can actually see her period start and stop in her CGM data.
Wow.
Like I know when it's happening just from what's going on. Like I'm also reasonably aware of her cycles. So I'm not like, it's not like I look up on a Wednesday and I'm like, it's happening. I can tell by the bend in the line, but I know that she's about to get her period at some point in the next day or so. Right. And just how her blood sugar is acting over the last 2 hours tells me that when she wakes up, she's going to have her period.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I say to Maisie sometimes, it is odd that we have this extra view into her. Mm-hmm. She had this, she had some really horrible ulcers at the bottom of her lip inside her mouth, sort of by her gum, just this weekend. And she was in a lot of pain. I was thinking, God, what's going on here? But I was looking at her bloods, which were totally fine. I was like, well, she's not getting a sickness or anything. She's well in herself, because if she wasn't, her bloods would be going a bit crazy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is weird that we have this extra insight into your body. And are you getting sick? No, you're fine. And they've disappeared, and she's much happier because she can eat easier again. But yeah, it is interesting, isn't it, that we see something in our children that other people don't.
If you told me I could wear a sensor and it would report back to an app and tell me, hey, your vitamin D looks low, your iron's a little low, you should probably think about eating more red meat because of this, or your cholesterol's moving up. Like I would gleefully wear something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
definitely.
Because what's the idea? We used to say about my little brother Rob. Rob's either actively in trouble and you're aware of it, or he's doing something that he'll be in trouble for later, and you haven't found out about it yet, right? He was such a scoundrel when he was a young person, and so anyway, point is, I would like to know that there's something afoot. I'd like to be able to get ahead of it, because I think there's a level of wellness that is attainable, and then there's this level of wellness that we live at. Like, you can go on, you hear people all the time like, oh, I've been tired for 6 months. Well, what if it was just, I don't know, your vitamin B and your vitamin D was off? Mm-hmm. And you're never going to know. You're going to drain down into the point where you drag your sorry ass into a doctor and say, I'm dying here. Like, I don't know what's going on. Then they run all this blood work and they come back and they say, oh, well, here, and here, let's address these things. And then months later, you start feeling better because you've made this address. How great would it be if just a bell went off and said, hey, eat more spinach, dummy. Like right now, you know,
it would be great.
Yeah. So, and it would change, you know, it would change your life in a way that you can't imagine because we don't think of ourselves that way. But you just pointed it out with diabetes, because in this one specific scenario, blood sugar, we know exactly where it is constantly.
Yeah.
And you can fine tune it. Now you're doing it, you know, with diabetes. So, you know, so bad stuff doesn't happen quickly, but you're, you know, other levels in your body being deficient or having too much also has a poor impact on you. It just happens so slowly you can't quantify it, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, I would take that if there's anyone out there smart enough to make that happen. I just think it would be amazing to have like the results of a chem panel and a CBC and stuff like that, you know, running in the background constantly.
Oh, it would. We could all keep ourselves in tip-top shape.
I also want to say real quick, Sian, just in case someone does take my idea and run with it, I'm patenting this right now, and you owe me money if you do this.
That's it.
There. Okay. Sorry. I deserve a piece if this happens. I will sue. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it sounds like technology, obviously, that probably doesn't exist, because if it did, I don't think we'd all be getting blood draws to get, you know, things checked. But I like the idea of it. So
yeah,
who knows?
I do too.
What else you have? What's on that list, Sian?
Well, one really random thing is on the list. Our consultant, our endo, had never seen anything quite like it. When so you know, I like to make things simple and keep things in control. And Maisie used to get really quite flustered when she was on MDI about rotating her sites, and she used her thighs for a lot of injections. And she'd be like, oh, you know, she'd spend ages touching her leg. Have I done it here? Have I done it there? I was like, how can I make this easier for her? So I ordered some henna tattoo pens, and we made this grid on her leg, on her thigh, just, you know, with a number of boxes. And she just went up and down the boxes doing her injections. And it meant that, you know, she didn't have to worry about rotating, because she was always rotating, because she was just going up and down her leg. And I can remember taking her to see the consultant. She said, oh, I'm just going to check your sites. And she was like, what is this? I said, well, I was trying to work out a way to make rotating sites easier for Maisie. So I just got these henna pens, and we just draw on her leg a grid, and she works through that. And she's like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that before, but it works brilliantly.
Well,
so yeah, it does.
It's a very good idea, because people get stuck. It happens to Arden all the time. She's like, this is where it goes. I'm like, it goes anywhere you want to put it, really. So, you know, like it's, and then you start getting little lumps under your skin because there's too much insulin. You have to move it around. Yeah. We just, so there's been for years, I've known, you know, obviously I was saying earlier about Arden having different insulin needs, different times of the month. She also has different sites that work better than others. And I don't pay any attention to it for years. I let her put her stuff wherever she wants. There are times that she's ovulating and she puts it on her thigh. And I think, don't do that, because her thigh's not as absorbent and doesn't work as well as a couple of other places. And during ovulation, she needs more insulin. And so I said to her recently, I'm like, look, you're leaving for college now. Here's the thing I've been doing for you for years that you're unaware of, is I've been putting in extra effort when your site doesn't match your needs. I was like, but moving forward from now on, these days, and she has a period tracker. I'm like, these days right here, you wear your pod on your arm. And these days right here, you can wear it wherever you want. And on these days right here, it needs to go on your stomach.
That's great.
And I was like, that will make your insulin work better for you in the situation. Yeah. So, you know. Yeah,
that's brilliant. I mean, anything that helps. At the moment, Maisie always wears her cannula for her pump on her tummy. And rotation is becoming a bit of an issue, because, you know, she gets quite set in her ways of where she wants it. And she won't listen to me now. So I said, right, you know, in 2 weeks, we've got the appointment with the consultant. She's going to have to tell you more about where you can put it on your tummy, because you won't take it from me. And she favors certain points. So hopefully she does listen to consultants. She's quite a rule follower. So hopefully if they say, right, you're going to have to move it around a bit more, she will. In the past, I have used Robux, is it? Robux vouchers to get her to do things. A little bit of bribery has helped, bless her. You know, I really wanted her to try. We really struggle with compression lows. Drive me up the wall.
Okay.
And she didn't want to move it onto her hip, sort of top of her bum area, but I bribed her and she moved it, and that worked for a while. But she's sleeping so heavily, and it's always on the wrong side. So I have begged her to move to her thigh again, which she says no. So I will be nipping to the shops on Saturday and buying a voucher and bribing her to try her thigh again, because she always sleeps on her back, and the number of times I have to get up and turn her over. Oh. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of bribery, bless her.
It's fine. Is her personality like yours?
In what way?
I don't know. You said control for both of you.
Yes. Yeah, she does, definitely.
What about her twin? Do they have similar personalities, or are they different?
Do you know, it's swapped, and I don't know how much type 1 has to do with this, but it used to be that Darcy was very confident and Maisie was a bit shyer. But actually it's swapped more recently, that Darcy is a little less confident and Maisie is more confident. Like, we went shopping the other day, and they each had a cash card or some cash, I can't remember, to go and buy something, and Darcy felt too nervous to go through the checkout, so Maisie went twice. She paid for her things, then she got Darcy's stuff and went back. And I was like, that's interesting, because that used to have been the other way round. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure why, but Darcy's very pragmatic. She's funny. She's really, they're both very kind-hearted, but Darcy's probably a bit more easygoing. I think that all the attention that Maisie got in the first year of her type 1 turned her a little bit into a monster. So I had to stop. I probably did spoil her a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had to
dial it back.
Yes.
Humble her a couple of times.
Yeah, because I was told in no uncertain terms by particularly the eldest, Scarlett, that I had created a bit of a monster.
Oh, I love it when my kids come to me and explain to me what I'm doing wrong with parenting.
Oh yes,
it's always, I get that a lot. You know what you're doing wrong? My son's like, here's what you've done wrong. I'm like, oh, okay. This kid living in my house, got no money. He's telling me what I'm doing wrong. I'm like, all right, that's fine. But they're often right, honestly. Mm-hmm. And it's I find it helpful, actually. When they're like, hey, why are you doing this? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I was like, I'm tired and I'm old. Like, I'm doing my best here, but I didn't think any of this was going to happen when I saw your mom's boobs the first time, which was really the reason any of you are here. It's just how mom looked in a shirt one day. It's got nothing. I wish there was something bigger to it, but I was like, I really want to try to see them if I can. And then here we all are 30 years later. Yeah. I don't know. So you're asking me what I'm doing. I don't know. You're not going to know either in 20 years. So good luck.
No. Yeah. It's exhausting. I'm exhausted and overwhelmed quite a lot of the day.
Yeah. I always wonder what people do who don't have health issues in their life. Like, what do they do with all that time?
Yeah. And what would I be? I mean, my husband always says, you always worried about something. I worry about type 1 now, but I wonder what I would be worrying about if type 1 wasn't.
See, and you and I are different. I wouldn't be worrying about a damn thing.
Would you not?
Oh, man.
Oh, I would find something. There's no doubt about that.
There's a whole other me in here that you don't know, and he would be relaxed. But I do wonder that sometimes. Like, what do they do? Like, I look at all the time I spend here and there, like just 5 minutes on this and 5 minutes on that. And, I'm not even talking about the podcast. It's not a lot of time in our life, but it's still time. Or, when you're at a restaurant and you have to pick up, like, I'm like, hey, give me your phone. And I don't want to be asking Arden for her phone.
No.
But here we are. I'm like, hey, can I get your phone for a second? And I've learned, I used to say, give me your phone. And now I say, hey, can I see your phone? It became important to her as she got older that I asked her permission to take the phone from her.
Right. Yeah. I can understand that. I think Maisie would be the same.
Yeah. So I learned that, but I'm also a boy, Sian. So you understand, like, I don't think about things like that. I don't think about how I sound or what I'm like, because I know my intent, and my intent is pure. So I don't need to, I don't know. I don't need to, like, I'm way nicer on this podcast than I am in my real life. Because I don't know if you're a kook, you know what I mean? So I got to, like, kid gloves, like, while I'm talking to somebody, because I don't want someone going off. I mean, how amazing is it that in 750 episodes, no one's yelled at me? I keep waiting for it to happen. I keep thinking someone's going to come on under false pretenses and get on and be like, I hate you and I hate this podcast. And it just it doesn't happen.
If that happened, would you
oh, I'd be so happy. I'd be like, oh, please tell me why. Like when you
and you'd put it onto the out there.
Oh, of course. No, it would be amazing. Yeah. Well, I just it's a good conversation. Like, for the same reason that I asked you, can you tell me what helped you about the podcast? I'd want to listen to somebody and say, hey, what don't you like about this? Now someone's going to probably do it. But
I was just about to say, be careful.
I probably damned myself. It'd be 6 months of people being like, and another thing, you're an asshole. You know what I mean? Like, great. But, it's just, I don't mind the feedback. Like, I don't take it all. Like, I've gotten feedback in the past where I've read it and thought, well, that's reasonable. And I do this thing now where when I make transcripts for the podcast, I use this online service, and I'm going to pull it up now just for fun. And so I drop an MP3 file online, and it turns it into a Word file that I can put online, so there are people who read the podcast. God bless them. I'm hoping it's for reasons of, like, auditory problems and stuff like that, not because they're reading podcasts, because it seems odd to me if you're just reading.
Well, I used to listen to the West Wing Weekly religiously, loved it, and but I sometimes did read it rather than listen.
Wow, yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah, I did. If I was particularly looking for them to discuss a certain thing, and I didn't want to maybe listen to everything else at that point, so I would just have a quick scan. Oh yeah, okay, they did discuss it. I'm going to listen to that one right now.
See, and I have a limited edition poster made by someone overseas, actually. Right behind me, it's U.S. Governor Josiah Bartlett for president poster. It's the greatest, like, it's a campaign poster, but from the TV show. I just thought it was really great art when I saw it, the way the person did it. But so here, I just pulled up an episode that you all haven't heard yet, right?
Okay.
And I am listed as a speaker, and Margaret is listed as a speaker. Margaret spoke 49% of the time, and I spoke 51% of the time.
Okay.
And so my eyes glance over those numbers when I make episodes now. And if I see it splitting, I get like, okay, don't talk too much. Like, I have that feeling. And there are some people.
What do you like it to be? 50-50?
I like 60-40 me.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But also that's because I read bumpers in the front where there's not another. I read the ads in the middle. I read stuff at the end. Like, it should be, if it's 60-40 me, it's probably more like 50-50.
Yeah.
In the episode, if it's 50-50, then it's probably really more like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm probably talking a little too much. And then there are times when Jenny and I do, like, short management stuff where it's almost like a comedy team, but we're not talking about something funny. I do the big setup, and then Jenny comes in and gives her opinion. And so there are people who hear that and think, Scott's talking more than her. But I'm putting you in the position so that when you hear her answer, it flows into your mind easily.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I set her up and she kicks it, that kind of thing. But yeah, here's another one that just went up the other day. 55 me, 45 Aaron. That's perfect. Like, for me, there have been a couple where people start talking and I can't stop them. I'm just like, I just give up. I'm like, okay, go ahead. Talk your face off. I don't know what to say. Just, and then I'll look later and they spoke like 70% of the time and I spoke 30% of the time. Then I realized like 10% of that is me like saying like Dexcom.com/Juicebox. I'm like, my God, I never spoke in this episode, But they all, to me, how do I want to put this? There are episodes that I've made that I personally wouldn't want to listen to. And then I get great feedback from them. And it reminds me that I'm not everybody. So even if the content's good, but I didn't like the flow of the conversation or something, there is still someone out there who it will hit. And so it's valuable for them. It's almost like when I put up episodes about people who are pregnant with type 1, they're very popular in a segment, but overall they don't download as well as other episodes.
Yeah. Because
not everybody is interested in having a baby or they already have or whatever. But I still see them as a public service. So I don't, like when somebody says I want to come on, like I have one going up in a couple of days. It's about IVF. I can tell you this, right? It's about IVF and pregnancy. That's what it was supposed to be about. This woman was going to come on and talk about in vitro fertilization and her pregnancy. And she was going to come on in like pregnant and talk. And we're having the conversation and, I'm just building the conversation up. I don't know how far we are into it, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, when I realize she's had a miscarriage.
Oh.
Recently. And I just I got crestfallen and I said, why did you come on and do this?
Yeah.
Like you didn't and now I said to her, I'm like, oh God, I said so many stupid things over the last 20 minutes. Like, I didn't know you just had a miscarriage, and she's like, it's okay. And I did not expect that to happen.
Bless.
Right.
No.
And so when you put that up as an episode, it's really going to help the people who need it. And yet there are going to be a larger percentage of people who are going to look at that episode, pass it by and not listen to it. Mm-hmm. But I never think well, I can't run this because I'm giving away downloads today. Like, I think of it as like, it's like a public service. Not everybody needs it, but somebody does.
And not everyone needs it at this point, but they may well need it at some point. And now it's there for, it's there for me and for Maisie in the future to reflect back on. Yeah. So, making the podcast is really, it was just somebody kind of flipped me around the other day while we were talking and they kind of interviewed me for a second. And I told them, like, I think of the podcast as it's like a compendium of diabetes knowledge that could exist forever and that will mainly be valuable for a long time until management somehow like drastically changes, Yeah. And, I told him that I just recently contacted the company that hosts my podcast. And I sent them an email and I said, this is going to sound morbid and I'm not ill. But what happens if I die? Like, how do I keep this podcast online? And they told me, and I'm going to mention it in a few episodes so that somebody hears it at some point. If I suddenly drop dead and you just don't hear from me anymore, if you contact the company that hosts my podcast and tell them that I died, they'll host it for free for the rest of the time they're in business. Because it's a medical podcast and it helps people. Well,
isn't that nice?
That's really nice.
I'm trying
Nothing
not to die.
Nothing is going to happen to you, but I'm
not doing my best.
But,
may I be honest?
Great.
I'm not doing my best to stay alive. I'm doing a decent job. If I was doing my best, I wouldn't have sat up all night last night. Arden's getting ready to go to college in a couple of weeks. And she comes into our room last night and she's like, hey, she's like, my legs, she's getting ready to get her period. She's like, my legs hurt. Like, can somebody rub my legs? And this is now what I believe why women get married. It's just so someone can rub them when they get their periods. I really believe this is all they're looking for. And so she comes in and I said, you better hope your roommate at college wants to rub your legs. And she's like, I don't think she's going to want to do that. And I was like, well, better talk her into it. And so, and she grabs my iPad and starts looking at pictures and she finds old photos from like my wife's family that have been scanned from like generations in the past. And she starts flipping through them. And before I know it, we're flipping through like my wife's family growing up, through my family growing up, into our young family. And before I know it, it's like 3:30 in the morning.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, I gotta go to bed. I said, I gotta get up and record with somebody in the morning. And I was like, you'll all just, Arden, you'll just sleep while I'm up, you know? And
well, you sound very sprightly. You don't sound tired.
Thank you. I got an iron infusion recently. I'm doing great.
Oh,
so
very good.
I'm all jacked up.
And how I'm in a similar-ish situation. Our eldest Scarlett, she is going to boarding school on Monday.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and she won a scholarship, bless her. She's done incredibly well. We're very, very proud of her. But I am finding myself crying often. We had a barbecue for her at the weekend, and I chopped up some celery, and I was just sobbing, thinking, I can't do this. I can't let her go. But then it suddenly, she's 13 and a half. She's not little, but she's, still my baby. And but then it suddenly dawned on me that if she's not happy, she can come home.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So as long as she's enjoying it, and hopefully she will, it's an amazing opportunity for her. And it's a fantastic school that she's going to. And it's not that far away. It's only an hour and 3/4. And she's actually going to be home every month, whether it's for a weekend or for a holiday, but yeah, my heart is hurting.
Yeah.
And Arden, I don't know how I'm going to leave. The parents have to leave at 4:00 next Monday. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to walk off of that campus.
Yeah, crying is the answer.
My baby.
Yeah, just
sobbing.
Well,
sobbing.
Arden's going to college. It's about a 14-hour drive from here. So it's a plane if you have to do it quickly.
Oh my goodness!
So we're leaving at the beginning of September, like a full day and a half before she has to be there. And then
wow,
we have to take 2 cars to get all of her stuff there, and it's gonna.
Are you emotional?
I lately I've been saying to her, are you sure you want to abandon me like this and just go to college? I was like, you could stay and go locally. I'll give you money and a car if you want to stay.
Yeah, yeah.
Wouldn't you like money and a car? So, but she's so excited about what she's doing and where she's going.
Oh, fantastic.
And she told me,
well, that's amazing.
Yeah. She said last night, she's like, I just want to go now. She's like, I went through not being sure, and I went through being nervous, and I went through being scared, and now I know for sure this is what I want to do. And she's like, but it's like 2 weeks from now, and I just want to go. And I don't know how to explain to her, like, I please don't leave. Like, just stay,
Yeah.
And then last night while we're flipping through the pictures, she points to this photo of her, like, in a bouncy seat. So how old are you then? You're less than, you're around 6 months old. You put them in those little seats so they can kind of learn how to hold themselves up, And she goes, isn't it crazy that baby's going to college next month?
Oh,
and
God.
I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you
Thanks for that.
It's 3:00 in the morning. You're going to make me cry? Like,
Scarlett keeps playing this ABBA song. I don't know the name of the song, from Mamma Mia. And the first words are something like school bag in hand. She, it's basically about leaving home. And I am just sobbing. She keeps playing it in the car, and she's doing it on purpose because she knows it's going to break me.
Well, you want to hear something
every time.
You want to hear something worse. That song is called Slipping Through My Fingers.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the one.
Right. So
and I was just about to say something. Oh, are you still going to be following Arden's numbers?
Oh, yeah. She's not getting rid of me like that.
No.
She's going to be sleeping on her own we're going down, getting her moved in. We're actually going to stay a couple of days afterwards and, go out, meet her. Like, so she's going to have, I don't know how you would put this. Are they flatmates? So,
yeah.
So she's going to be in a room that has 2 bedrooms, and there are 2 girls in each room. So there's 4 people in the flat, I guess. And I'm trying to say this in a way that you would understand. Ignoring that 90% of the people listen to the podcast in America now are like, could you just say that it's an apartment with 2 bedrooms, So it's an apartment style with 2 bedrooms,
right?
2 girls in each room. One girl's from Hawaii, one girl's from North Carolina, Arden's from New Jersey. They've all met online. They've been chatting, and stuff like that. But it's a strange thing. Like, we're gonna have to take these girls out to dinner and sit down with them and be like, hey.
Yeah.
So if Arden's thing, you know, like which one of you would be comfortable sticking this in her butt if, you know, like that kind of thing. And I feel badly for them even because they're also nervous and excited and etc. But we can't leave that space without those people understanding basic safety care for Arden, you know, if she can't help herself.
And does Arden ever get compression lows?
She hasn't recently.
Right,
but she has. So I mean,
would you wake up if you phoned her and said, turn over?
Well, we're about to find out because when she stays by herself, and we've been doing these little test runs for the last couple of years, like Kelly and I went to a wedding and left her by herself for a couple of days. And she does seem to wake up when she knows it's on her. She seems more receptive, but if she receptive to the sounds, but if has confidence that someone else is looking, then she doesn't hear it so much.
But a few weeks ago, Maisie had a sleepover in the village, and I was running through the streets at 4 a.m. because she was sleeping in a little trailer with 2 other children, and I'd said to her just before she went to bed, try not to have a compression. She said, "Don't worry, Mum, I won't because I can't actually turn over. We're like stuck where we are." I was like, "Great, yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, great." So when I woke up to let me find to a 50 with arrow down, I was like, "What? This shouldn't be happening," because she couldn't turn over. So I don't understand. And then I just get LOW, you know, low. I'm like, oh my God. So 4 a.m. I'm racing through the blooming village, find her, and one of the children had gone home. So she now had room to turn over. But I had phoned her 5 times. Nothing. She just, you know, her phone was on, but she was just sleeping through it. Oh God. It makes sleepovers difficult.
Then you get there and you're just like, roll over.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah. Great.
I'll make my way back. Luckily, the lady's out there tanning the leather. I can say hi to her. And I know you don't. In my mind, you live in the Smurfs village. It's just little mushrooms that you live in. And I know that's not the case. I know
that's not too far off.
Wait, I'm getting close. Do you love it when I say something outlandish to people who are living in Canada and they go, yeah, that is kind of what it's like?
Yeah.
I think I'm being stupid. And they're like, no, yeah, there is moose in my backyard. And I'm like, I knew it. There's an episode coming out next week with that girl, Margaret, that I mentioned earlier. And it's going to be called Midnight Gnocchi, which is not, is that how you say that? No, it's not. There's that's pasta. There's a fancier way of saying the word. Anyway, I wanted to name the episode Yukon Ass Shaker. Right. When you find out why, you're going to be so amused.
Is this an After Dark episode or just a normal one?
No, it's not. She just she was just found herself in the Yukon, right? Like pole dancing, but with her clothes on in a casino, and you know, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, what is? And she's such a nice girl, and you know, I'm like, how did you end up doing this? And she's like, I don't know, I didn't do it long, etc. And then I was like, did they throw chips at you? And she goes, yes. I was like, Margaret.
I was laughing at the last one that I listened to. I can't remember the young girl's name, but you were explaining the word
accoutrement.
Yes. It was, and I was giggling away. And what you said, oh, we're having a lovely moment now. And I was just laughing.
I was like, you and I are going to have such a lovely moment. I'm going to teach you a word. And
that's it.
And basically, she's like 21, 22 years old. She's a senior in college. Yeah. And she's just trying to figure out how to keep creepy guys off her and drink at the same time. Yeah. And I'm like, do you want to know what accoutrement means? She's like, no. Then I realized she didn't. Then I started stopping because I was like, I don't think she understands what this word is either. So we started defining words as we were talking to her. Anyway, she was really good. She was very honest about what it was like for her to be at college with type 1. And
she was.
Yeah, I thought that was really brilliant. That was one of the episodes that my tormentor doesn't like.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I liked that one.
Hard to get through.
No, it was. I like listening to those ones about college because, you know, sort of prepares me a bit for what to expect. Yeah. And in the future.
Listen, if I'm being honest, and there's no way for me to know people or what's in their heart, but I think this person that I'm talking about might be a dick. So don't worry about it.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
They're just trying to be difficult. All right. So, Sian, is there anything we haven't talked about that we should have?
No, I've gone through my list and no, we've covered everything. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
No, it's my pleasure. Your accent's terrific. You're great for you're great for the podcast. You're exotic and understandable.
I'm dreading listening to it because I actually hate my voice.
No.
I always thought I sound like a mammoth, a bit as if I've got a cold and a bit adenoidy.
Wait, what? First of all, I haven't gotten to the point where I ask you if you have any of those big Scottish cows near you.
Oh yeah, not far. Yeah.
No, they seem
just around the corner.
I would love to see them in person one day, but that's not.
They're really beautiful.
But wait, what did you say about your voice? You sound like a mammoth.
Yeah, like a woolly mammoth. I don't know why, but as a teenager, I always used to think I sounded like a woolly mammoth. If they were going to speak, I think they'd come out with my voice.
Is this like a Snuffleupagus thing from Sesame
Yeah, that
Street?
sort of thing. Yes.
So you think you think your voice sounds like muted, like not bright enough?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't see that. Do you know there are 4
thanks.
people on the Facebook page that have your first name spelling?
Really?
Yeah. That's crazy.
They'd probably pronounce it Sean. I might be wrong.
I don't know.
There might be a response to that on the group, but Sean is the most common way of pronouncing what my mum decided to pronounce as Sian. Yeah, annoying.
Is your mom just illiterate?
Honestly.
What is going on?
Why she chose it. I mean, my sister's Gemma, why on earth did she call me Sian? It's just been such a, and when people say it right the first time, I'm always like, what?
What's wrong with you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Like my husband can't say my name properly. So he just calls me Babe. Or,
are you the blonde in this camping photo?
Gorgeous. Camping photo?
On your Facebook. Are you the blonde in the camping photo?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably.
All right. Probably. Are there other blondes in your photos?
A camping photo. I'm having a look.
You have no photos up online, so it's either you or your family went away with another woman. I'm not sure which it is.
No, it will be me.
Yeah.
Are we not friends? Is there only a few that come up?
Yeah, I just have a couple that pop up.
Yeah.
That's all. I was trying to stalk you for a second.
I'm just having a look.
Well, your kids are lovely.
Yeah, they're cuties, aren't they?
They absolutely are. All right, so you have the cows. You sound like Snuffleupagus.
That's exactly it.
I don't know why. So, but wasn't he like depressed? Wasn't he like, hey, bird? Yeah, right?
Oh,
yeah, you don't sound like that at all.
I'm going to have to find him now. Yeah, well, thank you. That's for some reason what I always felt like
So it's the only...
I think my dad once told me he thought I needed my adenoids out because I just always sound like I've got a cold.
What the fuck? What are you saying?
And that's always stuck with me.
That's where you got that shining bedside manner when you're like, oh, it's diabetes. I don't know anything about it, but I know you can't get rid of it.
Not a cure.
Yeah. It ain't no thing where we take your adenoids out and you sound like Big Bird. I'll tell you that much. Oh my God. All right. Well.
Oh, my little bubba.
I appreciate this very much. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much. Take care.
A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCEAGON.com/juicebox. And of course, we're going to thank Dexcom, makers of the Dexcom G7 continuous glucose monitor. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Get real-time information that makes a real difference. And don't forget, T1DExchange.org/juicebox. Complete the survey today. Support research, me, and you. T1DExchange.org/juicebox. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. And if you join the private Facebook group, please say hello. I would love to meet you.